Hello, this is Shan from Happis, and this is the first proper video that I'm making as part of a whole series called Continuous Directed Change. It is a training course that I've put together over many years and use an awful lot in my work. So in this particular video, we're going to be talking about relaxation and how useful relaxation is. So each recording, each video is hopefully helpful just in and of itself, but it is part of a greater whole. Another thing to say is that because a lot of my work these days is supporting people with ADHD, I'm going to be looking at this primarily through the lens of how it impacts on a person with ADHD, but it is basically a course or ideas that are helpful for anybody that would like to improve well-being and mental and emotional health. So, okay, all that said, let's go back to looking at relaxation. Now, we talk about relaxation throughout this course because it's such an important part, and it's the first thing we're starting with because it's such an important part. I'm very aware that for many people with ADHD, we tend to have very, very busy brains, very busy bodies, always doing a lot, and relaxation isn't always the highest thing on the priority list. It isn't always that easy or even that enjoyable, but it is very, very important. And we are just today going to have a little look at why that is important for lots of people, and also why we are seeing such an increase in anxiety in today's culture. I'm not going to, it does point to why why anxiety is so related to ADHD, but that in some ways is another issue because ADHD is such a difficult thing to manage, and we have emotional dysregulation quite often, not always, and therefore we're spending a lot of time with a lot of anxiety. But most of us these days spend a lot of time more anxious than we used to be, and that is because of evolution and the fact that the way in which we as humans developed is not the way we live these days in our modern society. And as a result of that, we are spending large amounts of time in what we refer to as the parasympathetic state. Let me get this right. The parasympathetic state is what we refer to as rest and repair. Now, evolutionarily wise, we evolved to live very different lives to the way we live now. So maybe on the plains, that's how we kind of evolved, was with to deal with high threat situations, but not that often. So it might be, and those high threats would be, when we were hunter-gatherers, it might be being attacked by an animal or maybe another tribe or something along those lines. And so we have what they call what is referred to kind of in a more medical term as, and I always muddle them up, as you might have noticed, so I've written it down, into the sympathetic nervous system, which is also referred to as fight or flight, referred to that way so that we can understand that what's happening in our bodies is there to design to help us to either fight the thing or flight, run away from it. So what's happening in our bodies when we become anxious is we are flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, and we might get butterflies in our stomach because our digestive system quite often shuts down, a dry mouth. You might notice hands and feet get quite cold, or the blood is rushing to our core. The frontal sort of cortex, our rational part, quite often it shuts down. It's designed to help us to fight, to be very primal in our responses. And that in our modern day might be quite useful if you're about to run a race or you're involved in a fight. It's absolutely terrible for, if your internet has gone down or you need to deal with an irate colleague, or you're trying to deal with a toddler at the same time as having lost your car keys, you know. So that what our modern lives are about is much more consistent, low-level stresses that involve needing executive function and needing to use the rational part of our minds. And very often we don't need to physiologically be very, running away or fighting. And so our body is pumped to move, and it's just not what we need. So I think if we understand those things, it can really help us to be a little bit more compassionate, to be a bit more accepting. I mean, yeah, okay, personally, I wouldn't mind spending more time in the woods, but I don't particularly want to go back and live in a cave. I like my modern life and my modern comforts. And we have the knowledge and the technology these days to recognise that we just need to do things differently. So I suppose all I'm saying here in this video, we will talk later on about how to relax more, is understanding why it is so important. Understanding that for everybody living in the modern day, that being in that sympathetic state, I find that counterintuitive. This is a classic ADHD aside. Sympathetic to me says calm, but the sympathetic nervous system is the one that means fight or flight. When that's activated, we're up there trying to survive, and and everything is kind of on, which is fine in short bursts, but quite often, particularly when we've got ADHD, when there's lots and lots of stresses, and we're often confused and late and not sure what's going on and trying to do a million things at once, we can find that our bodies are permanently up there. And that obviously, it's not good for us. It's not good for, our digestive system alone isn't designed to constantly be off. It's, which is why maybe we end up with issues around irritable bowel and things like that. We're not resting properly, we're not sleeping properly. So as difficult as it can sometimes be, it is still very, very important for us to understand that relaxation needs to be part of our lives, and to do whatever it is that we need to do, and it will look different for all of us, to have periods of time where our nervous system is set to the parasympathetic, the rest and repair, being calm, able to to come back down out of that sort of crisis mode. So yeah, it's worth understanding that, and it's the first thing we look at. But I'll be talking a little bit more later on in the series about how, and some ideas about how to do that. So there we are. I'll leave it there. Thanks very much. If you've got this far, thanks so much for listening, and hope you're okay. Bye.